Hi everyone, Janie here, and today I'm collaborating with my friend Amanda, whose channel is Rise and Procraftinate, and I'll have that linked below so you can find her, and we're going to be sharing some fun ways to use embossing powder. For the first technique I'm showing you, I'm using Distress Oxide ink, Wow embossing powder, and watercolor paper, and I'm doing a smushing technique. You can also use regular distress inks or any inks that you have and any embossing powders that you have. And while I'm smushing the ink onto my craft mat, I would like to apologize for the lighting. It's horrible, and I normally record in my other craft room where the lighting is much better, so I hope you will forgive this and enjoy the video. So once I've gotten the ink onto my craft mat, I'm going to sprinkle the embossing powder over it randomly. And you can use more than one color of embossing powder and as much as you want, depending on the effect you're going for. Next, I'm going to spritz some water over it. And you don't want to spritz too much because I've made that mistake often. It's better to start off with a little and then add more when you need to. So what I'm doing right now is laying my watercolor paper on top of that, and then you can smush it around or dab it around or any technique you want to use to pick up the ink and embossing powder onto the watercolor paper. And along the way, if you need to, you can always add more embossing powder and more water if you feel you need it. What's really awesome about this technique is there really isn't a right way or a wrong way. It is just a creative, fun, messy way to get a really cool and unique look. And even though I'm not showing you this, you can always do one color at a time and dry it in between if you use Distress Oxides, and that will allow each color to stand out more individually. And if you're trying to get full coverage and you find it difficult to fill in all those little white spaces, you can always use your finger to move some of the color around. And once I was done with my first piece, I grabbed a piece of heavyweight cardstock to pick up some of the excess so that it wouldn't go to waste. Cardstock is more likely to warp, but it'll still be usable. And next I'm using my heat tool to melt the embossing powder. And here's a tip. If you let it sit to dry a little bit before heat embossing, it's going to shorten the time that you have to use your heat gun. And here's the first piece that I did on the watercolor paper. I desperately want to show you how beautiful this looks with the swirls of embossing powder, and I will have some better shots of samples of this after I show you this next technique. So basically this technique is the same as the first one, but instead of smushing, I'm going to be using watercolors on watercolor paper. And to help the watercolor flow easier, I'm spritzing my watercolor paper with a little bit of water, and then I am just applying the watercolor. And basically, I'm kind of doing this randomly, but not. It doesn't really matter how you do it. You just put the watercolor on any way you want and any colors that you want. You may want it to have a certain look for a background on a card, or you may want it totally random because you're going to be doing some die cutting from it. There are just so many possibilities with this. And now that I have the colors on there, and while it's still damp, I'm going to be randomly sprinkling the embossing powder on and then using my heat tool. This is definitely a less messy way to do it, and you have more control over where the embossing powder lands. And even though I'm only showing you these two techniques, the watercolor or the smushing, you can also do the same technique with watercolor powder sprinkles like color bursts or mica powders. The embossing powder takes longer to melt with these techniques that I've shown you because it's wet, but let me tell you, it is worth the wait. I just love the way that this one came out. And here's some still shots of the ones that I did in this video, plus another one that I did today, just to give you some ideas, but you know what? It's much better in person. And here's a piece I added to a bracelet a couple years ago because I actually thought it looked like a piece of turquoise. And here's a butterfly I die cut so that you can see how beautifully this technique works for things like this. These three right here were done on watercolor paper, and they are just beautiful. And this one is beautiful as well, but it was done on cardstock. So you can see that it is a little bit warped, and it would be really great for die cuts, be really beautiful. But I want to show you that you can also use this technique on cardstock and use it for a card topper. So let me show you one I've already done. This one right here was done on cardstock, and the one I'm going to be doing right now was done on cardstock, and I already have it attached to the front of the card, and it is ready to start decorating. So let's get started. To make my card, I'm going to be using this Snowflake Christmas Border die set from In Love Arts, and it comes with 2 pieces that can be layered or used individually. So I'm going to start off with these die cuts from that die set that I just showed you, and I wanted to show you that there's more than one way to use it. For example, you can use this die cut all by itself, just like I did on this card, or you can layer it and use it like this, or you can do what I'm going to do, and that is offset it just slightly so that it looks like that. And I'm pretty sure that you can find a way to use this piece all by itself. Okay, I am going to start putting this card together. And here's my finished card, and I think that embossing powder technique really adds something special to it. And if you like this technique, I hope you give it a try. And I also hope that you stop by and say hi to Amanda. I'll have a link below to her channel, Rise and Procraftinate. And personally, I'm going to be heading over there myself because I can't wait to see what she's done. Thank you all so much for stopping by, and happy crafting, everyone. Bye-bye. If you like this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, I hope you consider that too. And if you do, be sure to click the little bell next to the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any upcoming videos or giveaways. And I hope you stop by Crafters Castle on Facebook and also Crafters Castle Challenge blog to enter your creations.